Let's keep our fingers crossed, and I hope it will go great the whole day.
What did he say? Did he confirm that?
Yeah, he confirmed me that it's not going to be off the next 1 week or so. It's going to be like this. So I had a word with him yesterday. He said I'm not having a problem.
But he didn't say that it was that he created the firewall for the rest of the week.
That's what he said. Yeah, he said he confirmed with the same that I have to do the firewall for a week now. So it will not go off for a week. Let's see.
How did you guys get now?
I was there sitting home yesterday, finished there at 5 in the morning, went back home again. Got to
How you doing?
That's what our life is. Yeah, just even partying. We are trying to doing so many parties now that we arrange parties, but we don't do them.
We should do your own party.
We do it in March because that's the time we don't have that many events, so that's the time that we feel like that's our time now. We do a party for ourselves.
Is that right?
Yeah. Not often, it's like still it's a very
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I take the pleasure of inviting all of you to the day 2 of the Next Steps conference. We're running a little bit behind schedule. The first plenary that we have today is tackling the non-communicable diseases burden using sports as a medium, sports and activity-based learnings as mediums. May I take the pleasure of inviting the moderator for the plenary, Dr. Bobby John. He's the Executive Director of Global Health Advocates India. He was trained at the Armed Forces Medical College, Pune, and then stepped out of the career of the Indian Army to work amongst the rural poor in Maharashtra and India. Since then, he has been involved in many advocacy, many health systems creation, and he's been a consultant with the government, with UN, with a lot of organizations. We are so thankful to have him as a moderator for this plenary. Thank you, Doctor. May I also take the pleasure of inviting Dr. Vilyami Puloka, who's the team leader of Non-Communicable Diseases Healthy Pacific Lifestyle section in the Secretariat of Pacific Community. Sir, please come on to the stage. It's a pleasure to invite Dr. Timothy Armstrong, who is the coordinator of Surveillance and Population-Based Prevention Unit of the World Health Organization. Thank you, sir, for coming all the way. I also invite Dr. Imran Idris Nurali. He is the President of Indonesia Sports Medicine Association and Chief of Subdirectorate of Sports and Urban Health in Ministry of Health of Indonesia and a classifier of disabled sports. Probably all of us who run or want to run have heard about Dr. Rajat Chauhan. May I take the pleasure of inviting Dr. Rajat Chauhan, who is the primary catalyst of Back to Fitness. I also have the pleasure of inviting Dr. Monica Arora on the stage. She is the Director of the Health Promotion and Adjunct Associate Professor in the Public Health Foundation of India. And our last speaker for this plenary, Dr. Ajay Mahal, who is from the Allen and Elizabeth Finkel Chair of Global Health from Monash University. Thank you, sir. As all of us know that the non-communicable diseases are a huge economic burden on the world. NCD globally reports that it's one of the leading causes of deaths in the world, representing over 60% of all deaths. Out of the 36 million people who have died from NCDs in 2005, half were under the age of 70 and half of them were women. Even in India, the statistics are really appalling, which our esteemed plenary will touch upon. We will start the discussion with a small video which has been created by Nike, Designed to Move. And after that, it's over to Dr. John. Thank you, sir.
I probably would make a time machine. I would make medicine for the sick. I'd probably invent something new.
我会赢到5个总冠军戒指。
If I could have an extra 5 years to live. You said 5, right? 5 years. It's a long time.
I would try to fix everything I did bad.
I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much.
I would get more hamsters.
I would probably want to go looking for dark matter.
I think I'd go looking for aliens.
If I could live an extra 5 years.
I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter, but I don't have any wood.
I want to go check out the moon sometime. I'd probably teach my sister not to hate tuna.
I would try and invent a machine that lets you learn at light speed.
If I had 5 more extra years to live,
I would be the boss of all the chipmunks.
eu cantaria na frente de 1 milhão de pessoas.
I don't really know. I think I'd do anything. Why are you asking me that?
Good morning all. A warm welcome on a slightly chilly morning. I believe there are more people on the way, at least I hold on to that belief till the end of this session for the sake of my fellow participants here. Welcome to all of our esteemed speakers and panelists, and I hope that we would be able to have a time of not only being informed but being provoked to think in terms of what next we need to do as next steps to look at sports and address our emergent burden of non-communicable diseases. By way of start off, let me just throw a couple of things. I mean, we saw this video and the question proposed to those children was, what would you do with 5 years of extra life? It's kind of absurd to ask that question. 5 years? here's how numbers stack up. 1950, average life expectancy in India was about 33, male, female. In 2011, that number is more like 67. Now that's not 5 years, that's doubling. That came on the back of improved nutrition and a lifestyle that hadn't dramatically changed from physical activity to inactivity. That question being proposed is in the context of that 67 not going up to say 87, but that 67 remaining 67 or perhaps dropping. What is it that causes us concern? What is it that we need to do? And we have a distinguished panel of speakers who will illuminate different facets and try and address this question. You've heard everybody's names, the speaker profiles are here, we are behind time, so I'm not going to get into elaborate discussions. And this is no disrespect meant to any one of our colleagues here. Dr. Shaukat, who was supposed to be on this panel, listed on the agenda, has apologized. He's got a parliamentary question to answer, so he's not going to be here. Therefore, our first speaker is Dr. Paloka. Welcome. I see he's got his Tonga t-shirt and flag, Tonga shirt and flag on. Off you go, sir.
Savali Bali means take a walk. Tau Tala Tala means let us talk. Alofa Yadeo means I love you. Take it easy. Fai fai lele. Greetings. Good morning, everybody. Let's talk and let's walk, but take it easy. Life is too short. I'm originally from Tonga. If you want to know where Tonga is, you have to have a big magnifying glass and look at the map of the world. This is the Pacific. And I think this is a pretty good picture of you. Anywhere there's no countries in, that's the Pacific. It's a big black hole that is kind of inconvenient you when you go from Europe to US or something like that. But I'm here to tell you that in that big black hole there are at least 10 million people. And there are at least 22, 25 countries. People, I'm one of them. Next slide. This is really where the Pacific is. This is the daytime that you can even see where the Pacific is. So a lot of people ask me, where are you from? And I say, Tonga. And they say, where is that? And I keep on explaining, and it's very difficult. But the easiest way to find the Pacific, you go to Australia and you turn right, then the Pacific is there. This is our home, and in many places, it's very much like here. There's a tropical climate. We have beautiful beaches and everything, and thus people have actually named the Pacific as paradise. But the topic that I want to give you is the paradox in paradise. What happened to paradise? NCD has done something terrible to paradise. Finally, we saw this in 2011. The IDF of the International Diabetic Federation rated all the countries in the world. And you see there the prevalence of diabetes, and the Pacific are the top 10. We make it to the top 10. Finally, the Pacific is on. You may not know where it is, but we are on top of the world when it comes to diabetes. And you see, I want you to note the countries that are on the top 10 there. Note Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. They're a very rich country. And what the heck the Pacific is doing there? So we are not rich, we are not big, but what are we doing there? Why are we on top of the world? Next. This is the picture that is in the mind of people when they think of the Pacific. life is easy and ongoing. Go back a little bit. Coconut trees, swaying palm trees, sandy beaches. And in the Pacific, we want to declare the Pacific as the healthiest place on earth. So it's not just beautiful palm trees and beaches, but also to have healthy people. So that's what we're aiming at. Next one. This is what happened now. I'm just going to very briefly tell a little bit about what's happening to Paradise with NCD coming to our shores. We still have tuberculosis. We still have HIV/AIDS. We have dengue fever. We have malaria. Infant mortality is still an issue in the Pacific. But NCD, diabetes, heart disease, smoking related to lung disease is smoking, related to smoking, and obesity and some cancers is the big one. So NCD has come in a big way that we cannot afford, we cannot ignore NCD anymore. So I just wanted to have the picture that in Paradise, we still have all the diseases that many of you have, but on top of that, we have NCD or non-communicable diseases. And this is just to give you some ideas, some figures. You see the graph over there where there is the blue graph up there. This is from WHO information, and it shows that the NCD is the blue one. And next to it, that is the communicable diseases. There's tuberculosis, HIV, and all those things here, the red one. And the yellow one is the injuries. And look how big and how tall this NCD is. All the region of the Pacific is the graph to your far left. And the Pacific itself, that shows it's very much the same picture when you look at the region of where Pacific belongs to. And this is a very big problem. And the prevalence of diabetes and prevalence of obesity is very, very high in the Pacific. And you can see any of these countries, you can actually swap around the name of the countries. You can put Guam where Fiji is or Tonga is or something like that. It doesn't really matter. They are pretty much on the same boat. We are having the same problem. It doesn't matter which country you come from, which island. Prevalence of diabetes and obesity is very high. And that is why we made it to the top 10, ranking all the countries in the world. This is a very sad story about the Pacific. You see this is death. This is finish below the age of 60. I should be dead because I'm over 60. I'm very lucky to come from the Pacific and still alive. But this is the rate, and look at that. Some countries, more than 60% of the population. And this is men, death-related. And this is premature death. Of course, we all die. But we don't have to suffer when we're living and die before God wants us to come home. That's the real issue here in the Pacific, and I'm sure many of the countries as well. It's not that whether you die or not. It's probably the only thing for sure that there's no certainty you will be born, but once you're born, surely you'll be dead. But what's happening in the Pacific? Because we don't have the resources, we suffer while we are living a very short span of life. And that's not a very good way. And that's really the paradox in Paradise. Women fares a little bit better. I never understood this one here. Women seems to be high, the rate of obesity and diabetes, they seem to be higher compared to men, but they seem to live longer. Someone told me, sometimes you go on the road and you see there's a sign there saying, men at work. And it means that that's the only time that men is at work. But women, they wake up in the morning and they keep on working all throughout the day. That's why they live longer. And maybe those of us men need to learn something from that. the point is that here, it's not that much different. When NCD comes in, it has no respect to your sex, whether you're a man or woman, whether you are young or old, whether you live in paradise or you live in India or you live in Geneva or wherever you live at, it doesn't matter. It will happen to you if you do not keep the rules, if you don't do the things that will keep NCD away. And this is what I want us to think about. And this is really probably the message that I want to leave with you. The fact is, what the risk factors are doing. Remember, when we talk about NCD, we don't really talk about the causes. We talk about the factors that contribute to causing the disease. And and there are only mainly the four of them: smoking, eating too much, or eating the right stuff, and not physically active enough, and abuse of alcohol. Basically, those are the four main risk factors. And combining them is worse. You cannot be a top athlete and still smoking and think that you're healthy. You cannot be running every day and not smoking, but when you eat, no, it's out of control. So you have to be mindful. The combination of all these risk factors is the important thing. The next point that I want to stress here, the fact that it's like a pipeline. The risk factors is like feeding a pipeline of NCD at the end of it. And this is why it's important for young people. Because what you do today is important for what's happening to you tomorrow. And this is why it is important that we take care of all the risk factors, combining the risk factors. The impact and the outcome of combining them is worse than its individual one. But so the point is here that it is important. This is the picture from the Pacific, all the different countries in the Pacific, and look how tall those spars are. It's up to 70% of the population. Thanks. I think I have a couple more slides. This is again just stressing the fact that this is a graph of young people. Look at this one here, 13 to 15. If we think we have a very high rate of obesity and diabetes and NCD now, think again. More than 45% of the population is under the age of 25. And look at the survey here between the age of 13 and 15. Look at that, it's almost 60% of the people that we're surveying are obese. So this is a big issue. Again, it's the idea of the pipeline feeding in a big NCD issue in the future. So NCD already is significant and risk factors are feeding the future pipeline. And I think this is one message that I want all of us to take home. This is very, very critical. It's not just where we are now, but looking at the future and especially looking at the young people. Next one. Just, you know all this, the pathway of NCD. It started off at that other end with all the social determinants. And then progressed to the common risk factors. And in the common risk factors, we can do something about it. And it progresses until it got to the disease. Most of the people in the Pacific, they do not walk to the hospital. They are carried to the hospital because they are so sick. They don't come when they are just beginning to be ill. And therefore, what we are trying to do here is to push this back. We want to determine, we want to assist in this, at the other end. Create the environment for people to stop smoking. Create the environment for people to exercise. Create the environment to have healthy food before we allow them to come to this end. And I don't know what happened in evolution, but it seems that we are progressing that way. Actually, this is more for our discussion. The next slide. Next. Yeah, go back one more. Okay, leave that. And this is okay. Forget this slide. Go to the next one. Yeah. This is the one message that I think that I would like to bring up in our discussion, and I'm speaking mostly to the young people here. You know, we kept on saying that tomorrow I will do it. Tomorrow will be a better day. But remember that today is the tomorrow you dreamt about yesterday. You said that yesterday. So your moment is now. You need to do something now. You cannot keep on saying tomorrow. And must remember that you yourself is the only instrument you have to deal with life and contribute to life. And that is why it's so critical that we look after ourselves. I used to tell the people that, you know, I like the advertisement, when you get in the airplane, they say, if the mask comes down, put your own mask first, and then look after the child. Because if you die, you both be dead. So those of us here who are trying to help others, we have to put on our own mask first. I think that's the last one here. This the last beauty contest in the Pacific. This is for the different Pacific island countries, and they still look very slim over here. But in 5 years' time, might be a different. Anyway, the point that I wanted to stress again to all of us, especially the young people. Okay, we kept on saying that tomorrow is your day, but I say to you, today is your moment. What you do today will influence and have an impact on what you'll be doing tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Puloka. Dr. Nurali?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. This is Lumpini Park. You know, I take it in Bangkok last year. This is a nice place to physical activity. I'm sorry, my English is not fluently. I'll try. This is outline presentation. And you know, this is 19 leading factors to death attribute in the world, where physical activity is number 4 to make a death premature. This is presentation of death cause in Southeast Asia, in region in 2008. There are almost 65% contribute with NCDs. And in Indonesia, National Basic Health Survey in 2007, almost NCDs contribute about 70%. I want to make compare in National Basic Health Survey in 2007 and 2013. There is increases in cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease increased to 1.5%. Then compensatory cord disease are now 0.3%. But hypertension decreased. But diabetic mellitus increased, asthma, and stroke and central obesity is increased in Indonesia. But tumor and cancer decreased. There is a population age more than 10 years on physical inactivity by province in Indonesia in 2013. Prevalence is 26.1% in population in Indonesia physical inactivity. This is a pyramid of NCDs where metabolical physiological risk factor is rise blood pressure, overweight, obesity, rise blood glucose, and rise lipids. We contribute with behavioral risk factors. This is tobacco use, unhealthy diet, physical inactivity, and harmful use of alcohol. This is social determined, economic, agriculture, and so on. And then this is iceberg phenomenon of NCDs, where we find risk factor and disease in hospital. Disease is upper the water, it's just small. We can intervention with prevention premature death and management of stroke and diabetes and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. But it's too late if we find in hospital. But it's more important is early diagnosis and health promotion and disease prevention in primary health facility or health center and at home to against biological risk factor and behavioral risk factor. I think it's more important to prevent and control NCDs. This is a linkage between physical inactivity and sedentary lifestyle with overall NCDs. But we can prevent and control NCDs with physical activity. This is metabolic syndrome. The role of obesity can be diabetic, cardiovascular disease, blood pressure, obesity, and triglyceride increase. This is a level of physical condition where we must make community to be healthy before to take peak performance, include the athlete. I think the athlete must be healthy, fitness, productivity to everyone, for employee and another person, and to be athlete to be peak performance. This is a basic of physical activity, and more specific is exercise, and more specific is a sport. To be good, right, measured, and regular. This is a basic in Indonesia to develop physical activity. And this is continuum periods of physical activity. We start pregnancy and postpartum on post-delivery in children, adolescents, adults, and older adults. Between adolescents and adults, we have athletes, and between adults and older adults in pilgrims, we have 220,000 in every year go to Arabic Saudi. We have to build physical fitness of pilgrims. And this is implementation of sport health in Ministry of Health in Indonesia based on, we have guidelines of exercise during pregnancy and post-delivery in primary health center, and guidelines to develop physical fitness of school is through health promotion school or UKAIS, and guidelines to develop physical fitness for employee at workplace, guidelines to develop physical fitness for pilgrims, and guidelines to build physical fitness for athletes, and the last guidelines physical activity for elderly. And this is benefit regular physical activity. I think you know about it. And regular physical activity at the correct intensity can reduce the risk of death by 40% and reduce the incidence of diabetic by almost 40%, or can lower the risk of colon cancer is 60%. This is mechanism of cancer reduction with exercise. You can read on. And I think WHO in 2002 make move for health, you know. We try to active living 10 minutes every day to physical activity, moderate activity, light to moderate activity, and be to activity for health 30 minutes every day. And we exercise for fitness. We do moderate and vigorous activity 3 times per week, 20 minutes or more. And this is for the athlete, I think it's individual training on sport. Set place of physical activity, we start at home during travel, go set place at school for the children and public place. And we have intervention to individual behavior, school-based physical education, environmental approach, community campaign, social support intervention in community, and public policy approaches. And this prescription of exercise is frequency, intensity, tempo, and type of exercise. And principle of exercise is overload, progressive, and individual. This is modification of duration to do exercise program. And this is modification of frequency to do exercise program. And we have promote partnership of NCDs, prevention to control NCDs. We have promote agreement between the government and other relevant partners, reorient the role and assistance of national network of NCDs control, strengthening the role assistance network working in province and district in NCDs control, and develop national action plan for implementation of diet and physical activity. Is overall the national policy to program implementation, get input process indicator to have output indicator, and back up with national strategy, we can reduction of NCDs prevalence. This is the linkage between components of diet and physical activity in every sector. And there are stakeholders of national network in Indonesia to NCDs control. Start with National Development Planning Agency, Home Affairs, the House of World Representative, Religious Affairs, Youth and Sport, and another sector to include universities and UN agencies. This slide shows how to have physical activity of school age. In Indonesia, we have to develop traditional games like this. Traditional games and stretching in the classroom, and the community in university and college, bicycle in the university, and traditional dancer, and for elderly. We have a physical fitness test at workplace in Ministry of Health and another sector. We tried 3 years ago, and exercise for pilgrims. Before go to Saudi Arabia. And we have a car-free day every Sunday in main road in every city in Indonesia. Please come to Indonesia to have in Sunday. Everybody can exercise and sport without vehicles or without cars. Include the police. We try to develop medical fitness center in office and in hospital. I think exercise is medicine to try to prevent and control of NCDs. And the city park, I think Lumpini Park, I think is a nice place. Indonesia, I want to develop that. And the conclusion, my presentation, physical inactivity is part of the problem, and physical activity is part of the solution. And the intervention to increasing physical activity. And this message, you can choose exercising 1 hour a day or being dead 24 hours a day. Thank you, Shukriya.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm Dr. Tim Armstrong from the World Health Organization based in headquarters in Geneva, and it's an absolute pleasure to be able to come and speak briefly this morning on the issue of non-communicable diseases and the important role that physical activity plays in the global combat against non-communicable diseases. I think the first two speakers have actually presented a lovely case for the importance of physical activity and its health benefits, and also in relationship to the Pacific Island countries and Indonesia, the transition from the increasing transition in the prevalence of non-communicable diseases and their risk factors, including physical activity. I'd just like to start with talking a little bit about WHO, the World Health Organization, who we are and what we do. Because I find many people in new audiences that we speak to don't necessarily know what role we play in terms of the global health agenda and within the UN system. Of course, we are the World Health Organization. We are the specialized agency responsible for health within the UN, and we were established in 1948. We comprise 194 member states, and we are a one WHO. However, we have a three-tiered structure: headquarters in Geneva, 6 regional offices, and around 130 country offices, low and middle income countries. So the 6 regional offices you can see there on this slide, and the regional office for this particular region is in fact here in Delhi, and I'll be working in the regional office for the rest of this week, taking the opportunity to visit India. So what do we do? Well, primarily we're responsible for providing leadership for health around the globe. We shape the health research agenda. We provide guidelines. We articulate evidence-based policy options for member states. We provide technical support to countries, both directly and indirectly through our partners, and of course we undertake surveillance to monitor trends over time of major health issues. WHO has a 6-point health agenda. We are currently going through a reform process, and of those 6 health agendas, non-communicable diseases has been placed as the second top priority for WHO and its member states. Why are NCDs now being recognised as such an important issue? That's because in all countries, including developing countries, by any metric by which we measure, NCDs, non-communicable diseases, are causing enough death, disability, and therefore development problems that we require a coordinated public health policy response. This slide just shows some of the major products, if you like, norms, standards, guidelines and initiatives that WHO has undertaken over the last decade or so. The first time that, in fact, WHO and its member states began to consider the issue of non-communicable diseases was in 2000, when there was a resolution around the prevention and control of non-communicable diseases. Since that time, there's been some landmark resolutions and landmark products. One of the most important being the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, which was endorsed in 2003 by the member states, still the world's only legally binding health framework. The Global Strategy on Diet, Physical Activity and Health, which was endorsed in 2004 and very relevant for the discussions here today. And most recently, the global strategy for the prevention and control of NCDs, and I'll go on to speak on that a little in a moment. So I mentioned that globally, non-communicable diseases are the major burden now facing the globe. 63% of all deaths are now due to non-communicable diseases around the globe. And you can see on this slide here a breakdown there of those NCDs. You'll note that the orange striped bar of around 47%, that is globally 47% of NCDs of people dying before the age of 60. And we recognise, as my colleague Viliami mentioned, we will all die of something, but no one needs to die of a modifiable non-communicable disease before the age of 60. This is simply unacceptable. Just to clarify, when I'm speaking about non-communicable diseases, I'm talking about 4 main diseases. That's coronary heart disease and stroke, diabetes, cancer, and chronic lung disease. And there are 4 main modifiable risk factors which contribute the majority of those diseases: tobacco use, unhealthy diets, harmful use of alcohol, and of course physical inactivity, which is why we are primarily here today. Physical inactivity is one of the 4 major risk factors and can contribute to the reduction of NCDs, as my colleague just showed in his presentation. Williami also mentioned in his presentation the high burden of NCDs which occur in the Pacific Islands. This slide just shows the disparities between countries in terms of the probability of dying of an NCD between the ages of 30 and 70. And in some countries, such as those in the Pacific Islands, around 70% probability of dying from an NCD, which you compare to the global average is only around 22%. So therefore we recognise that in countries which have the appropriate policies in place, have the appropriate legislative and regulatory responses, we can make a huge change to the length and quality of human lives. The recognition by member states of WHO and the UN that dying before the age of 60 is not only an unnecessary evil, if you like, but it has huge and catastrophic financial effects. We recognise that NCDs now are a development issue, and some work that WHO undertook with partners a couple of years ago as we were leading up to a high-level meeting in the UN General Assembly on NCDs, estimated that if we take no action, if it's a business as usual, the cumulative lost output in developing countries associated with deaths due to non-communicable diseases between 2011 and 2025 will be at $7 trillion. $7 trillion if we do not take action on NCDs. Whereas the overall cost of implementing a few recognised cost-effective interventions to prevent NCDs, and physical activity promotion is one of those recognised cost-effective interventions, will cost $170 billion. So the cost of inaction versus action is one that we must really move the agenda forward and making the case with politicians. I mentioned the UN high-level meeting that was held in 2011, only the second time in history that a health issue was brought to the UN General Assembly. A document came from that General Assembly meeting, a political declaration on the prevention and control of NCDs. This political declaration has really lent us the way forward, or a roadmap that the UN-wide response to NCDs will be taken forward. And we will be discussing again in September or October of this year the the follow-up to this first meeting will be later this year. One of the outcomes of the UN high-level meeting was a request that the WHO takes the NCD agenda forward, and in May of last year the member states of WHO endorsed the Global Action Plan for the Prevention and Control of Non-Communicable Diseases. The vision of this action plan is that there is a world free of the avoidable burden of NCDs, that we will be saving lives before the age of 60, and the goal is to reduce the preventable and avoidable burden of mortality and morbidity and disability due to NCDs by means of multi-sectoral collaboration. And I want to stress in this presentation the importance of multi-sectoral collaboration. We recognise that for physical activity in particular, only a whole-of-government approach can implement the appropriate policies and plans to reduce non-communicable diseases, and we also need governments and other stakeholders, relevant stakeholders and NGOs to partner to deliver the appropriate kinds of interventions, such as we see with Magic Bus, for example, to ensure that we are reaching the right populations in the right countries. The Global Action Plan for Prevention and Control of NCDs has 6 main objectives. I'll only speak here about Objective 3. This is the objective to reduce the modifiable risk factors for NCDs and the underlying social determinants. Within the context of the Global Action Plan of NCDs, the WHO member states agreed to 9 voluntary targets to be reached by the year 2025. And one of these targets is that there will be a global reduction in physical inactivity by 10% by 2025. Now, I cannot stress the importance of global targets. The fact that the WHO member states have set themselves an accountability mechanism have set themselves targets for which they will try and achieve by implementing the appropriate policies is very important. And very important for everyone in this room to understand that this also gives one a leverage from your own, perhaps from your own positions in your own constituencies, to go to the government and say, we can assist you meeting these global targets by the provision of our services. So if we're moving now just to the importance of physical activity within the Global Action Plan for NCDs, we recognise that actions to advance the implementation of the Global Strategy on Diet, Physical Activity and Health, the 2004 document I mentioned previously, with relevant strategies, with a focus on policies and actions across multiple settings, as I've mentioned, and an emphasis on a life course approach, and interventions to increase the participation in physical activity in the entire population, which are cost-effective, are considered by Member States to be an important way forward, with the aim of contributing to the global target of a 10% reduction in physical inactivity. So WHO provides a range of tools to assist Member States to achieve these goals. We have global physical activity recommendations. These have been adapted at regional level. And we also have partnerships, which I want to talk to in a moment, and partnerships such as we're working with the Australian government, particularly in the Pacific Islands, to move the NCD agenda forward, using sport there as a vehicle to engage with relevant populations for not only the social and development aspects, but also to reduce NCDs, which impact on health and therefore social and development aspects as well. The partnership with the Australian Sports Commission in the Pacific is where we've agreed to work together in our respective countries and areas of expertise to accelerate the implementation of national NCD strategies, with particular focus on strengthening and joint initiatives to increase participation in sport. We in WHO and the Member States recognise that sport is a part of physical activity. Sport is appropriate for many population groups, not only children, but particularly for children, and is a way of increasing physical activity, increasing social cohesion, reducing mental health issues, and increasing the opportunities for health and development benefit. The final partnership I'd like to mention here this morning is the partnership that we developed with the International Olympic Committee. The former president of the committee pictured there with my Director General, Dr. Margaret Chan, and a recognition that we, again, in health, can partner with appropriate sports bodies to take the agenda forward to promote physical activity and health. And with that, I will leave it. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you very much.
I'm going to make a slight change in the order of speakers, and I'll invite Dr. Monica Arora next.
The slides. I'll be talking a bit about the health promotion approach that has been adopted for some campaigns within India and also with some of our global partners. But to begin with, just to set the stage, I will briefly talk about what earlier speakers have talked about, but a bit in the Indian context. Next slide, please. So, yeah, thanks, I'll do it. Looking at the Global Burden of Disease study released in 2012, we see physical inactivity as the top contributor to Delhi's out of the first 10. It is at the 10th position. But important is also to look at that diet and physical inactivity cluster together and are responsible for the largest global disease burden. So keeping that in mind, when we talk about NCD risk factors in India, there are multiple publications available, and literature is clear that it is not only a physical inactivity but sedentariness, which is also important as a risk factor. So looking at studies done with adolescents across India, in multiple studies have shown that the physical activity index are poor among adolescents and youth. Also, looking among adults, there are published work which have shown that being physically active and using walking or bicycling to work is associated with reduced cardiovascular risk in Indian population, and a clear dose-response relationship was observed between duration of cycling to work and being overweight, having hypertension or diabetes. So definitely pointing that it is not only the individual risk factors one has to address, but there are also environmental challenges, the upstream determinants, which are policy related, the city planning, urban planning, which needs to be looked at if we want to promote walking to work as a physical activity behavior to be adopted by Indian population. Also, continuing with the NCD risk factor and physical activity contributing to it, another study conducted by our group, which was hospital-based case control study, it clearly showed that the relative risk was higher if people were physically inactive, and also sedentariness does increase the risk of coronary heart diseases. So being active and playing sports together with leading a healthy lifestyle helps reduce the risk of cardiovascular diseases. And what are the solutions? There have been multiple reports, as earlier speaker Dr. Timothy Armstrong pointed out, that there have been many WHO reports as well as other recommendations that have shown that there are cost-effective interventions that countries and government can adopt and prioritize as they move forward to looking for how they can control NCD burden in the countries. And unhealthy diet and physical activity promotions, particularly promoting public awareness about diet and physical activity, has been listed as one of the cost-effective interventions for NCD prevention and control. Also, looking at the targets that again Dr. Armstrong mentioned, India has recently adopted India-specific targets, very much on the lines of the global targets, and under physical inactivity, it is the relative reduction in prevalence of insufficient physical activity, and by 2020 this target is to achieve a relative reduction of 5%, and by 2025 matching with the global target of 10% reduction. So there have been some interventions to promote physical activity that have been found to be effective in Indian settings. There have been community campaigns down south in Tamil Nadu, where providing community parks and making them conducive for walking actually helped in increasing brisk walking among people, and there are also global examples of how community and health promotion settings-based approach have provided interventions which are effective in promoting physical activity. Also looking at again costs which have been provided, so priority interventions for NCDs in countries have been shown, and again physical inactivity, there's a cost per person which is very low if there are mass media campaigns done to promote physical activity, and it's given between, for China, India and Russia, and giving all the interventions together, even the cost per person are still very, very low if what was said by earlier speakers, if we adopt the population-based approach and hit at the bottom of the iceberg rather than addressing and looking at only the tip of that iceberg. There have been evaluations which have been undertaken recently by our group. When we are saying that determinants need to be addressed, we took a school audit. And also there were no protected cycling lanes. Also within the school, though there is provision of having school grounds and some playground equipments, there are courts and quadrangles available, but again, the whole behavior of adopting physical activity or sports being for non-sports people as well, adopting sports as a lifestyle, is something that needs to be promoted through community campaigns, behavior change campaigns, and the like. So, talking a bit about what we have done to promote physical activity among various age groups in India. And I'm talking about a recently initiated campaign. This is Walk for Health, which was launched by Public Health Foundation of India with partners Hriday, World Heart Federation and Bupa Foundation. It was a global challenge which was launched in September last year called the Ground Miles Challenge. And this was linked to a smartphone app which was prepared by Bupa and provided to various partners globally to disseminate this Ground Miles app so that people can download. This is based on the motivational theory that people are motivated to walk, and there are reinforcing messages that are provided, and this has a pedometer, so you have your phone in your hand and you walk and it counts your miles as to how much you are walking and how many calories you are burning as well. It promotes you to increase your targets as you reach a particular level. So we did promote this behavior change app in India through various events. So we did walkathons and engaging sports celebrities. In Delhi, the walk was actually launched by Sania Mirza, the star tennis player in India. In Mumbai, we engaged celebrities like people from the Bollywood who were engaged. So Sonam Kapoor launched the walk there. And in Vizag, we had about 3,000 students and other people participating. So a total of 5,000 participants, and the rally here was flagged off by Mr. Anup Kumar Yama, the current artistic skating world champion. So promoting that youth should be adopting sports and be physically active to be able to escape from the burden of non-communicable diseases. Alongside to engage younger children and also to send the messages home to parents, because the family engagement is very important in such behavior change campaigns. Inter-school poster competitions were done in all the cities, and these are some examples of the posters that students made to promote walking as a regular behavior. And these were awarded, and social media was used very extensively. We engaged celebrities to continue to reinforce the messages which were being provided through these posters as well as through the campaign. And celebrities like Gul Panag tweeted on promoting physical activity and walking to be able to prevent diabetes, cancers, CVDs, linking it to the diseases and also giving guidelines as to what is optimal physical activity level. So promoting at least 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activities through various mediums. We also engaged like-minded organizations, formed partnerships so that the message could be strengthened. The Youth for Health is a Facebook page which was used. We have about 13,000 members and a reach of about 200,000 members around the world. And the interactivity is very high on this page as youth keep posting messages and discuss issues of common concern, and physical activity is one of that. This is an example of a campaign we launched along the Commonwealth Games when they happened in India. So we all know how much was invested in creating the infrastructure for Commonwealth Games. But what it meant for the common people in Delhi, that never translated to having the people mobilized to be physically active or adopt sports. So therefore we launched a campaign, Delhi Active, Daily Active, alongside Commonwealth Games, so that people are motivated and are taking physical activity as part of their daily lifestyle. And we did poster campaigns, again put up various bus shelter messages so that there is wider visibility. We continue doing a lot of physical activity campaigns in colleges, so partnering with the colleges around the Youth Sports Festival, and also organizing mini marathons and walkathons with college students, so using school as a health promoting setting as well as colleges as a health promoting setting. Talking a bit about our World Heart Federation, PHFI is a member organization of World Heart Federation, and there have been a number of campaigns they have undertaken. One of them is Eat for Goals. It's a cookbook for children produced through a joint project of Union of European Football Association, World Heart Federation and the European Commission. It uses famous football players to educate youth on the link between balanced healthy eating and performance. There are similar other campaigns they have undertaken, like Respect Your Health, which is again a campaign by UEFA official health program for Euro 2012 European Football Championship, promoting healthy lifestyles overall among children and their families under the campaign Respect Your Health. European Healthy Stadia Network. It's a holistic approach to developing stadia as a health promoting setting, so promoting sports not only among the people who are playing, but also the audience and people who are coming to the stadia to watch as visitors. This is a campaign undertaken to promote sports among women and girls to avoid heart diseases and CVDs. And this is a toolkit which they had, World Heart Federation had prepared for its members to create similar campaigns in their country. So, talking about yet another initiative, which is now a multi-city initiative by UEFA, is where they are seeking partnerships with World Heart Federation and will work with selected European member organizations to conduct baseline assessment in low and middle income communities to identify barriers for parents and their children to getting physically active. And information collected will be used to identify practical interventions for improving awareness of and access to physical activity. So before I conclude, I would just like to say that there have been campaigns undertaken in India, but the need is to evaluate these health promotion interventions. Always the money is too little to either do an intervention, and evaluation does require extra resources, which has always been a challenge in low and middle income countries. But it is very important to evaluate these campaigns and have government endorsed guidelines which people and various partners can uniformly use. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jamal.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the invite, Bobby and colleagues. The talk today will actually, what you've heard so far is why one should actually undertake preventive action, including physical activity for good health. I'm going to offer you another reason, good economics. And that's what I'll talk about today. So it may mediate through health, but physical activity can also translate into good economic outcomes without the good health intermediate. Next one, please. Can I just go? Yeah. So the outline of my talk will consist of sort of three broad ideas. The big one would be linking physical activity to physical activity to economic outcomes. The second part is, well, if it's so wonderful, if physical activity is so wonderful, why don't people actually exercise more? After all, we are rational human beings, so we ought to be doing stuff that gives us higher economic return. And finally, I want to conclude with some ideas about what the key research gaps might be. Monica pointed out one, and I'll have some ideas on that. So how is physical activity linked to economic outcomes? One idea is that physical activity affects economic outcomes because physical activity affects health and health affects economic outcomes. The second one is somehow, some way, physical activity directly influences economic outcomes. So here's something for you. Why might being physically active influence health and economic outcomes? Well, one thing is, let's start with the health part of it, since we've heard a lot about how physical activity influences health. So, well, then in that case, for this presentation, the task is, does health influence economic outcomes? And the answer, of course, is yes. Certainly, if you're a sickly person, you might be less productive at the workplace. If you're a sickly person, you may not even want to work. You participate less in work. And the third possibility, you may want to work, you would love to go to work, but you get fired. And there is that issue. And of course, the fourth possibility is that somebody who's providing you care at home because you are sick would then have to forego work on their own. Of course, in some cases, they may actually work because they have to raise money because you are sick. So there are many possible complications, but nonetheless, the idea is when you're sick, sort of forego work time. And that may be, or you become less productive, and either way, you sort of lose income. And finally, of course, when you get sick, it's not about just lying at home and lying in bed. In fact, you actually pay money out of pocket. Now, this is not Australia, this is not forget the US, this is not the NHS in the UK, this is India where most people in the middle class and even the lower middle class pay out of pocket for healthcare. So in fact, being in a bad state of health can involve a significant financial burden on households and individuals. So here's an example of what I would call the obesity penalty. Being fatter than usual can actually influence your income. Now, without worrying about what the y-axis is, imagine the y-axis is simply wage. And on the x-axis, we have listed percentage of body fat. And essentially, as you have more and more fat content, you tend to earn less beyond a point. So what I have here is somewhere, this is about the 30%, so something around 30 to 40% body fat content, you actually start earning less and less. And that typically on the obese side. Now, of course, you might wonder what's going on the other side. Why do excessively thin people also earn less? That's for another day. We'll focus on the obesity part for the moment. And you can ask me in the question and answer session as to why that's happening. Another example of why unhealthy people might work less. So here's SRH stands for self-reported health. Now, self-reported health is quite a good predictor of mortality in the future. So you can think of it as an indicator of health. And basically, we find that people who report poor health, which is on the right-hand side of this chart, essentially are found to work less. And so again, labor force participation tends to decline as you sort of report poor health based on your own assessment. In India, and I did a couple of studies on India, and here is an example of people, basically we compared households that had an individual with either heart disease or cancer, and compared them to a whole bunch of very similar households. And what did we find? The typical adult workforce participation, which is the left-hand side column, was less than the workforce participation of adults in similar households that did not have chronic conditions. So certainly you might find that, and this is again reflects the idea that actually when you fall sick, you may end up working less and therefore you might have to forego earnings. This is an example of a different story, which is now we are moving beyond the idea of ill health influencing income and labor force participation to ill health actually imposing significant out-of-pocket expenses on your household. So what we have here in this chart, again in the left-hand side, what we have are households with cancer. We're comparing households with cancer to very similar households, and what you find in the first row is that the out-of-pocket spending in any 15-day reference period was essentially nearly three times similar households. So basically, households with a person with cancer reported in a 15-day period 3 times the expense as an average similar household. What's even more interesting was that people who actually in that household who did not have cancer had less money allocated to them. So there is another consequence. So people in the household who actually didn't have cancer ended up having less money spent on their own health care. So there are consequences of members of households, but even despite all of that, overall spending was higher. So despite non-sick members getting less health care, overall the household was spending more money on health. Now you've seen this before, you've seen physical activity influences health. So I won't bore you with it, but I do want you to note one thing. It's not simply about NCDs, physical activities has been shown to be linked to cognitive ability to reason, abstract thinking. It's linked to energy levels and motivation. So it's not simply about NCDs, it's more than simply that. I mean, lower levels of mental health, and of course all-cause mortality. And this, of course, is a chart that you've seen before by other speakers, so I'll skip that. What I thought I might sort of interest you in is this chart. It looks complicated, but what it's telling us essentially is the following. This is a cohort in Germany. Somebody followed a population over 16 years in Germany, from 1995 to 2010 or so, thereabouts. And what they did was to ask, how much extra did a person who was sort of conducting at least 1 month, every 1 month, a sort of specified minimum level of physical activity, how much extra did they earn over somebody who wasn't doing that level of physical activity? And what they found was, the average was, the person who was undertaking physical activity over a 16-year period, they earned on average $100 more per month. $100 multiplied by 16 years is $19,200. That's a lot of money. And this is for an individual household, essentially, for an individual person actually, and that's for men and women. Certainly you end up earning more, according to this particular study, very carefully done work based on a very unique German sample of households. So certainly it leads to higher earnings. That's for the health mediation. What about direct effects of physical activity on household earnings or individual earnings? Here are some examples of why that might happen. People have found, there have been studies done, what I would call in experimental settings, where they asked individuals to look at faces. And they found that people who were, first of all, we know from literature that actually people who are attractive have symmetric features and so forth, and they have particular sort of facial ambience which tend to get rewarded in the marketplace. It turns out that in fact, even less attractive people who actually have higher levels of physical activity tend to get rewarded in the same way. Their symmetric features get noticed more than the asymmetric features. So again, in fact, if you do physical activity, you might actually overcome your physical attraction barrier. If that's an issue, it may not be an issue. And of course, then the whole issue of being physically active is, if people who are physically active have been shown to be have been considered, the perception is they're outgoing, they're socially competent, and so forth. They're confident about themselves, intelligent, and so forth. So they ascribe qualities which they otherwise may or may not have. And of course, being healthy as well. So, all this lovely stuff is so wonderful, you earn much more money, why don't people actually exercise more? Certainly I can tell you why I don't exercise more when I'm in Delhi. I would be stupid to do so. I may not live long enough. And I want to list out a couple of factors which have not been mentioned in this chart. So certainly if you're an ill person, you tend to exercise less. Of course, if you're already sick, you'll exercise less. And in some sense, it tells you that physical activity makes you sick. Well, it makes you less sick, but in fact, if you're sick, you don't do physical activity. So it actually sort of puts you back further back in that area. Demographics, people who are old exercise less, women exercise less, cultural issues also come in. Socioeconomic status. People who earn more tend to exercise more. People who are more educated tend to exercise more. And why does it happen? Well, one thing that's happened over the past 100 years is that actually jobs have changed. Previously, you got paid to actually exercise. You used to work in the fields and you actually earn more. Nowadays, you get paid to sit in the chair. So in fact, what's happened, and you pay to exercise through gyms and so forth, or sort of buying houses to live near parks. Okay, so in that sense, things have changed over time. The whole issue, the whole workplace has changed. But nonetheless, you find that people who actually who earn more, tend to exercise more because they can probably afford to pay for these gyms. And of course, there's the whole issue of psychological, cultural belief in whether I'm athletic or maybe not. I mean, most Indians think that we're not very athletic, we have the wrong body type, etc. That can also matter. And of course, sometimes even parents say, what's the point of becoming a great athlete? You might as well study and become an engineer in IIT or something. And then of course, somebody mentioned availability of facilities. Well, if you don't have facilities, you don't have parks, you don't have gyms, you don't have walking spaces, you don't have bicycling routes, how will you exercise? So there is that issue. I mean, those people who sort of have these Nordic tracks at home know very well what happens after the first month. You put them under your bed and you never see it again. So certainly, those things matter. But there's something else also going on. When you physically exercise, it's actually, the gains are very long term. They don't happen instantaneously. So in fact, it's something so far away So if you're a true procrastinator, you say, well, let me watch my cricket match now, and then tomorrow I'll exercise. But think about the reasoning going on forever and ever. So in that sense, because the rewards are so far off in the future, you may not actually want to exercise. So there is that instant gratification issue which has to be addressed up front if you're going to promote physical activity. Even though you might earn more in the long run. Forget about India, even the US, for example, they don't find people exercising to adequate levels. I mean, look at these percentages here. No more than a quarter of the US population is actually conducting exercise, physical activity in line with the federal guidelines. And of course, at the bottom are the Asians, who got even less than the US average. Okay, what do I think are the key research gaps? Now, I must confess I didn't think of it in a very deep way. But certainly, one area that I feel, I mean, look, you're not going to have governments reacting and undertaking a sort of policy steps unless they can actually see stronger evidence of the influence of physical activity. So one area which I think needs more work, and this is in my area, of course I'm biased, certainly we need more research on the economic gains from physical activity. There's evidence of any type. Monica pointed out some recent work in India, and that's the first time I've seen it. So certainly I feel that there is much more work that needs to be done, documenting physical inactivity, and then going beyond that to show what the economic outcomes linked to it. And this is generally true of most low and middle income countries, and India is no exception to that. I think it will also be used to do some more work on the economic roots of physical inactivity. Why don't people exercise? It's not simply about not wanting to do it. It could simply be the place you live, the job you have, the neighborhoods of people you live with. I mean, the literature is replete with articles on that you won't exercise if your friends don't exercise. So there are these effects of who you hang out with. So all those are important, and at some level we need to look a little bit more deeply into what factors drive physical inactivity. And finally, as Monica, again, I'll sort of underline what Monica said, we do need much more research on assessing and evaluating physical activity interventions. If we don't evaluate them, we simply will think the money will go down the drain, and say, why don't we do something else? Why don't we make bridges, for example? So one has to somehow show through evidence of, I would at least say, large-scale projects, pilot projects, or even state-level projects, to show that in fact physical activity interventions actually work. I'll stop. Thank you.
Dr. Chauhan?
Okay, I'm going to make you guys really uncomfortable because if you want to get better at anything, that's the whole idea. Be outside your comfort zone. So I will ask all of you a lot of questions. So let's get started with it. Okay, so this guy Albert Einstein, I mean, he was the one who said, this thing about had a thought, and if he's given a problem and he has 1 hour, he wants to spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and then 5 minutes solving it. And that's what I'm going to do. Just come up with a lot of problems, and then let's see. Okay, so I like to call myself a militant advocate of increased physical activity and exercises. Not really here to make friends or anything like that. That's completely fine, because I'm pretty sure I'll be shoes will be thrown at me right now. The game that we, some of us, especially guys like me who run, cricket does not come up on the top for them. But having said that, there are a lot of learning from cricket. Adam Gilchrist and Shane Warne, I don't know how many of you know, but off the field, they weren't best friends. On the field, they were probably the best bowler, wicketkeeper combination ever. So the point really is, we're sitting in this room, we have an objective, we want to do something. We don't have to be friends, we just need to work together and make it happen. So that's the whole idea here. Okay, so physical activity, as we know, and increased physical exercises makes you healthy, makes you give a lot of money. So why the hell are we not doing it then? Okay, that's my problem that I have with that. Now, what's my objective is this. It is to ruffle a few feathers, okay, and then take it from there. Now, what is the problem? Okay, rather than people who are not in this room, I don't care about them. The people in this room, they are the issue. Why haven't we done enough? Let's stop patting our backs, because, that's yesterday. What have we done today? What are we going to do about tomorrow? That's the whole idea. In my opinion, what Delhi or India lost, the biggest opportunity was this one. I actually moved back from London because of this, and my flatmate was telling me, Olympics are coming to London and you want to go to India because there's a Commonwealth game coming. I mean, how big is Commonwealth Games versus the Olympics? And I was like, that's home, that's where I want to change things. I'm not sure if, that was good, because in 2007 I decided not to be a part of Commonwealth Games, which is, again, rather than just blaming you guys, I was part of the problem itself. I quit when I shouldn't have. Okay. Rather than actually talking about you, the guys who are in administration, guys who are teachers and stuff like that, I'll start with my own self, people from my own community, the so-called well-rounded doctors. This is what we are. Anyone wants to move, we tell them, why the hell do you want to move? You'll have knee pain, you had a cardiac issue, so don't move because you'll have a heart attack again sooner. It does not work. It doesn't work for our economic, or a business model doesn't work if I tell you to walk, or if I tell you to be physically active. It's a corporate healthcare industry today. It's not what we think it is. It's not what WHO says. Sadly, that's not the case. When you're in a corporate world, you're supposed to tell people, you need to be a patient long term. That's what works for us. And that's what you guys do very, very well. A practitioner should act in the best interest of the patient, but do we really do that? And again, this was an article in British Journal of Sports Medicine taken from there. Clinicians have an ethical obligation to prescribe physical activity. Then what are the barriers then? And what stops them? Now this applies to everyone, who's a teacher, who's a parent, who's in administration, whatever, it applies to everyone, not only doctors. Now, when we do MBBS, our teachers and the curriculum does not tell us enough what physical activity is all about. Okay? There are no marks for it. And there's hardly anything in the book, on textbook of medicine. I mean, there'll be like half a page maybe, which says what does physical activity do. The problem starts from there. So we don't really know. So it's not just that I go up to a doctor colleague and say, why aren't you saying this? The problem is our system is so bad, we're not taught how to do anything about it. Luckily enough, there's a very, very good paper which says how the curriculum needs to change. We need to start from there, from the very basic thing. Specialty training. Now you've done your MBBS or whichever other education you've done. Now you're like, I need to kind of get more specialized because only then will I make money. Then you're too focused on your specialty, whether it's pediatrics, gynecology, orthopedics, your radiology, whatever it be. You just don't want to know anymore. You want to know that little part. You need to know the eye or gynae or whatever, and no more. You're not interested in anything more. Then comes practice soon after, because you've taken a loan or you've paid a high fees to get into that college. So you're like, you're way too busy. You're focusing on illness, and now you stop advising because you're just busy, running the rat race. Personal life, as I said, too much money to earn, so there's nothing else to do. You don't do it yourself. When you have kids, this is what you gift them. Okay, you give an iPad from, month one, probably. And when it's a holiday, this is what they do during the summer vacations. And they're having fun. So they're not missing you, don't worry, they'll not miss you. And here they go again. So even before a medical college, this is what you give them. So it's a catch-22 situation, really. Sadly, you don't care anymore for them. Now, healthcare industry. Now, that was at an individual level. Now, what is the industry as it is doing? Now, what happens is, I have a reputation, I'm invited to talks and all that stuff, but never again. So I was at this Second Asian Breast Cancer Conference 2012 in Bangalore. And I was the guy who was supposed to talk about role of physical activity in breast cancer survivors. I was probably the second last speaker or the last speaker, luckily. So half the room was anyways empty. So I was trying to build up a case, like, how physical activity can improve it, and just to throw some stats at, people who might not know. 50% of breast cancer can be prevented if a lady is physically active and no one's interested to talk about it or listen about it. That's fascinating. In a breast cancer conference. It was very lukewarm, and pretty much everyone was saying, we know it. Yeah, you know it, so what you've done. So that's fascinating when that happens. Then I was at, same year, Second International Conference on Interventional Pain Management. This was at AIIMS. Again, the same thing. In chronic pain, what does physical activity do? What role does it have? Same response again, we know it all. you know what, if they knew it all, I have a business where I take care of pain management and physical activity. I would not be having a decent amount of patient if people were doing the job properly in the first place. Okay, now this page is actually for education. Now, I'll tell you, actually no, it's our health ministry. Okay, so it's Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Now, a lot has been spoken about the 4 big things about NCDs and India and all that. Look at the 4 of those causes here if you see them at all. This was taken yesterday, I think, from their website, the screenshot. Okay, it doesn't even feature there. So the public sector, private sector, public sector, I mean, who do we blame? This is education. Now this is breaking news. I don't know if you guys know, this came on the 8th of February 2014. Behavior and discipline in schools. This is in UK, Department of Education. What they say on page number 8 of this document is about discipline. You know, how do you discipline your students and how to punish them. Check this out, okay? Extra physical activities such as running around a playing field is a punishment for the kids. Do you think they're going to pick it up after that, if it's going to be punishment? You know, 3 days back. Yeah, and it was, just to kind of add up to this, I mean, in a separate session I'll be talking about, you know, where's the evidence. The very first very decent study that was done about physical activity improves health was way back in 1951. You know, and this is, and in the same country, by the way. Okay, and this is what they come up with after that. Okay, now this is a colleague of mine from UK who is very, very big advocate of physical activity again. He is a primary care editor for British Medical Journal. And this was last year. He made a statement that yes, it's all good, what you guys are saying is good. I'm an advocate as well, but I'm sick and tired of it. I can't be the main guy taking care of it. Let it be anyone else. It's someone else's problem to have the footpath done, the cycle path done, and whatever else. He said, I can't take care of it anymore. And that's sad, because if people like that kind of make a statement like that, where are we getting to then? And then we have I know it all, and the Rambo syndrome amongst us, like, I'll do it on my own, I don't need to know anything. That's a problem as well. Now, I don't know how many of you saw this movie, Avengers. Now, the guy with the hammer there, he's Thor. And Thor thought he was going to save the whole planet on his own. He needed the whole gang together. We have amazing guys in this room, and we need to work together. Thor on his own can't do anything. And I love this movie. And so I was trying to tell the story to my son again. So, okay, this is what the learning was. It wasn't anything else. So I think that's what we really need to be doing. Trying to really learn from each other rather than, again, patting our back seriously. Okay. This is someone who ran a casino really, really well. So his point was, when you get an opportunity, hold it by its balls and make it do what you desire. And only then can you succeed at something. I think we have a great opportunity right now. We need to move really, really quick, otherwise, it'll be too late. Now, one of the things, I've probably said enough about, problem from problem. I think what we're missing is, and this I only learned in the last 6-7 months. I was, for the longest time, trying to chase the kids, trying to get them fitter, because they are the future for tomorrow, tomorrow's future, whatever. It just wasn't getting anywhere. The principals were coming in the way, the teachers were coming in the way, the parents were coming in the way, and there was no infrastructure. And luckily, I stumbled upon, training some women for running. And it was fascinating, because they were mothers, they were daughters, they were principals themselves, they were working as HR heads in companies, and various things like that. CEO of a company, founder of a company, stuff like that. Suddenly, because of working with 18 women, suddenly there were 100 other people who were started physical activity within a month or so. So the nucleus of the society, in my opinion, is the woman. As much as I'm probably a very male egoistic guy or whatever, but the point is, if we don't actually address that, we missed it. So I think the focus is, again, the nucleus of the whole society has to be the women that we need to work on. And I think I'll stop there. Thank you so much for listening to my...
We've had 6 excellent presentations. We are over time. We heard from a community perspective, we heard from a governmental angle, we heard the policy attempts of bringing people together on this common theme of preventing NCDs. We heard a public health perspective on this, why it makes good economics. and where healthcare professionals are. And each of them, I hope, has thrown a stone or more into our thinking. I don't want to stand in between us, T, and the next session, but here are 5 things I think I picked up, and I want to kind of throw them in no particular order for us to think over and come back to our next sessions, and as we continue on in our pursuit of figuring out where sport and health will be. No solution is achieved by a push alone. There has to be a pull too. A lot of the communications, a lot of things that we've talked about are on the push side. How do we get smarter at it? How do we communicate it better is something that we haven't really picked up, and I hope somewhere along the line there will be a serious effort at putting this into a manner that is more intelligible and appealing to those that are target audiences. On the pull side, which is what most of our papers and our presenters have kind of alluded to, I just want to crystallize 5 things. 1, the whole dichotomy of transport, mass transport versus personal transport. How do we address that? Is there a role that links physical activity towards the provisioning of transport incentives? Second, where's our school curriculum with respect to physical activity and sports integration? Third, where are the incentives in the design of our urban clusters to improve walk to work? 4, how do we bridge what is everyday fitness to the notions of elite sport? When we talk about sport, it's always about professional elite sports. How do we bridge that gap between what's everyday fitness and the notions of elite sport? And the last one, for those that buy health or healthcare, how do we incentivize their insurance covers or their ability to take trade-offs on their payments in lieu of what they spend on exercise? Bottom line, we all are economic animals. We do trade-offs. Which are the trade-offs? How do we prioritize these 5? This is not by any means an exhaustive prescription, but just a beginning of a set of stones that we need to think of multimodally to promote physical activity, one of the 6 pillars that Tim Armstrong kind of put out in the WHO framework. This will require not just a bunch of people interested in health or in education, but it will require active cooperation from the policymakers who design or who kind of think in terms of where the future of our population will be, how do they live, how do they go to work, and how do we stay healthy. I hope you've had a successful or a useful session. T, and we will come back to our 2 breakout sessions. Thank you very much. Thank you to our speakers.
We have tea served outside. After that, we'll come back to this hall for the 2 breakaways. The first breakaway, which will be towards that corner of the room, will be science behind NCDs, and we'll have sports